What would you do if your grandfather stole your rightful inheritance just because you and your siblings are girls? My name is Anna, and I'll tell you a story of how I went from a high school teacher to chair of a company board just to make my grandfather pay. Before I dive into the story, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and tell me in the comments section where you're watching from. My story begins with my father, Daniel, a man whose shadow was both my comfort and my inspiration. To me, he wasn't just a parent. He was a force of nature. By day he worked multiple jobs, by night he pored over law books, building a future brick by brick. He worked himself ragged, built businesses from nothing. And somehow, in the little slivers of time left over, he was fully present. He played with me and my sisters, Emily and Sophia. He laughed with us, taught us, loved us so completely that I believed, deep in my bones, nothing could ever break our family. But life is cruel. When I was 12, Dad was diagnosed with stage 4 stomach cancer. The kind of cancer you hardly recover from. The hospital became our second home. I still remember the sterile smell of antiseptic, the endless beeping of machines, the way my father's once strong hands grew thin and frail beneath mine. One night I sat by his bed, whispering, "Dad, it's me. Anna. Do you still know me?" He couldn't speak. His lips were cracked, his voice gone. But then, he smiled. A faint, weak smile. It was enough to tell me, yes. He remembered. He still knew his daughter. That smile was the last gift he gave me before he slipped into a coma. Days later he opened his eyes just long enough to whisper goodbye to my mom, Grace. And then, he was gone. Our lives shattered in an instant. And into that void walked my grandfather. His name was Joshua. To outsiders, he was respected, stern, accomplished, dignified. But to us he was something else entirely, a man who believed the world revolved around him. At my dad's funeral, as tears streamed down my mom's face, Joshua did not mourn. Instead, he boasted. He bragged about his son's grades, his law studies, his business ventures. Not out of love, but pride. My dad's achievements were not his, they were trophies for Joshua to display. When my mom struggled to find work, Joshua stepped in. He offered to take over my father's businesses for the sake of the family. Mom, still drowning in grief, agreed. She trusted him. But Joshua had no intention of building Dad's legacy. He had one goal: control. For a while we believed his lies. He told us the companies weren't making money. He gave us small allowances, just enough to survive. And when he did, he expected gratitude. But the truth was uglier. He refused to let go of control for one reason: my dad had only daughters. In Joshua's eyes, women could never run a company. I will never forget his words at a family dinner, his chopsticks tapping the bowl like a gavel. "What a waste," he scoffed. "All daughters. No sons to inherit. Your father built these companies for nothing." My mother's face flushed red with hurt. I was only a teenager, but his words seared into me like hot iron. Emily, my elder sister, tried not to let the hurt show. Sophia, the youngest, clung to my mother's sleeve, wide-eyed and confused. I clenched my fists under the table. Rage smoldered in my chest, hot, then cold, then focused. While we grew up, the two businesses didn't provide much for us, likely because my father had been one of the main reasons they thrived. Mom was in and out of jobs just to keep us afloat. Joshua offered to help put me and my sisters through school. I managed to score scholarships to good schools, so thankfully he didn't have to do as much for me, but we were grateful for any help. Emily and Sophia relied on whatever scraps were handed to them. After I made it out of school, I found out the full extent of our ruin. My family was broke. My sisters were still making their way through school. Emily even offered to stop and just get a job, but I told her to keep going because she deserved to graduate. Joshua had cut us off because he didn't approve of the directions my sisters took in life, especially Emily, who in his narrow view was too female to have a career in medicine. "Why are you wasting your time and money becoming a doctor? You're just going to have children and quit," Joshua sneered one night when Emily proudly shared her exam results. Emily's eyes glistened, but she held her chin high. I swallowed the urge to shout at him, to defend her, to knock my grandfather into silence. There's a certain helplessness to being young and poor and resentful all at once. I was working as a high school teacher when the truth landed in my lap like a fist. One of my father's old business partners called me about one of the companies. I asked him how the company was doing, and his voice dropped. "Anna, your grandfather is taking money from the company," he said. "He's siphoning it, renting the prime office space under his own name, making deals with competitors. He's taking dividends he's not entitled to." My hands started to shake. But why would he do that? He offered to help us. He's been making you think the companies aren't profitable. He's been paying you crumbs to keep you quiet. He's profited from your father's work while your family struggles. All my life he'd been making us feel indebted to him for money that was supposed to be ours to begin with. He lied to us by telling us that Dad's companies weren't bringing anything for us. When he cut us off from our own money, forcing my sisters to consider dropping out, to give up careers they had been working their whole lives for. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. This was not just greed, this was theft against my father and my family. And the more I dug, the worse it became. Joshua had used his position to take possession of the company's office space, forcing the company to move into smaller, cheaper quarters while renting the original space to competitors under his own name. He collected rent and favors while the company he nominally presided over was hamstrung. He turned my father's life work into his personal ATM. It would have been easy to rage, to storm into his house and start a scene, but I knew Joshua too well. Pride was his religion. He loved being seen as the benefactor, the savior. He wanted credit more than cash in some ways, though he took both. So revenge had to be surgical, not theatrical. I recognized that no matter what Joshua said, my sisters, my mother, and I were legally the owners of my father's company shares. I got the paperwork in order. I had my mother and sisters sign a statement that made me the legal representative of my father's estate. Quietly, I approached board members, without him, and laid everything out, the siphoning, the office scheme, the lies. I could see their expressions change from polite puzzlement to anger. I contacted extended family about Joshua's unethical practices with the office building. Once other relatives realized what he had done, they pressured him to evict the competitor he had planted in the prime office space. He scrabbled and pled with relatives to back him, but their patience had run out. He had taken my dad's legacy for himself. The more I pulled, the more threads unraveled. Joshua had countenanced his own empire by hiding behind the legacy of my father. He had counted on us to be grateful scraps. He had failed to account for pride's other face, humiliation. He had never imagined we would take the fight to the board. The day I planned the final act, I felt like I had lived a whole other life in the last 2 years. I had been a teacher, grading papers and smiling politely at teenagers who thought I didn't know their secrets. I had also become a student of corporate law, of company bylaws, of human behavior. My late-night study sessions were fueled by coffee and a need I couldn't name at first. It was not simply revenge. It was reclamation. At the next board meeting, I prepared for the moment I had been waiting my entire life for. I arrived early, my palms dry against the leather of the chairman's chair. It was a small, absurd thrill to sit in that seat, the chair Joshua had occupied. The directors filed in, all but one nodding as they took their places. The room smelled faintly of polished wood and coffee. Joshua came in last, the door opening with the little whoosh I had come to associate with his entrances, gaunt, confident, expecting ceremony. He paused when he saw the chair turned away from the table, when he saw the directors already in their seats, and finally when he saw me. His eyes widened. What are you doing here?" he demanded. I smiled, soft and steady. "I'm the chair now, Joshua. The company and my family no longer need you. From this day, I'll be representing Dad's estate." His jaw dropped. For a moment I thought he would explode, his face a mask of disbelief, anger, and a desperate attempt at dignity. He had always been able to twist situations with his loud voice and sharper words. Now he had to look for help and found none. He tried to find the familiar lines of defense. "Do you know that I'm the one who put you and your sisters through school?" he said, voice trembling somewhere between rage and supplication. I held his gaze. "No, Dad did." The words were simple, a small, undeniable truth. The silence that followed felt like glass breaking. Joshua's color drained. He looked around the room as if the board members might change their minds and give him back his kingdom. The directors remained still. One of them, Mr. Keller, the lead director, cleared his throat. "We've reviewed the documents," he said quietly. "Miss Anna represents Mr. Daniel's estate. Given the evidence of misconduct, the board will proceed accordingly." Joshua spluttered, searching for something, an argument, a counterpoint, a paper that could save him. He found nothing. The rules, the documents, the law, all the things he pretended he understood better than anyone, were finally aligned against him. I could feel my pulse in my throat, my knees steady beneath the table. Satisfaction flooded me, not the giddy kind, but a deep, sitting peace. This was what I had wanted, not to humiliate just for the sake of glee, but to see truth restored, to see my father's name taken out of the mouth of a man who never earned it, to ultimately prove to him that a woman is capable of anything. After the meeting I stepped down. I did not keep the chairman's seat. I never wanted the post in the way Joshua did, seeking applause, ribbons of praise, the hollow power plays. I took a modest job in the company's treasury department as a bookkeeper. My salary was meager, but I now had access to the ledgers, to the flow of the money my father had created. The first thing I did as a board member, before I fully relinquished the seat, was appoint my mother to a permanent position in the company. She deserved it. A lifetime of caring, of running a home, of quiet stewardship finally got recognition in a small, practical way. The legal team we hired cleaned up what they could. There was mess, there are always consequences when someone's greed has run unchecked for years. But the company began breathing again. Profits were rerouted where they belonged. Emily returned to school with new funds and new confidence. Sophia began a job that gave her independence and joy, something Joshua had scoffed would never be necessary. Joshua, stripped of his titles, went home to a quiet he had never known. He had spent his life cultivating admiration and obedience. Without them he was a hollow man in a big house. He had alienated friends with his boasting, he had worn through his marriage with selfishness. Even my grandmother, who had humorless patience for many things, had had enough. She no longer shared his bed. He tiptoed through a life without the applause he craved. Word spread in the family, and some relatives who had once turned a blind eye now came forward with their own resentments. They were not saints, but their eyes opened to what we had always insisted was true. Joshua's extramarital distractions, siphoning what little might have remained for a mistress who offered fleeting affirmation, became gossip and, for him, a final salt in the wound. He had spent a lifetime trying to prove himself to everyone but the people he should have loved. Now all he had was regret. I am not proud of wanting revenge in the way I once did. I am proud that I was patient enough to plan and precise enough to execute without burning bridges that needed to stand. I am proud that I reclaimed what was rightfully ours and put it to work for the people who deserved it, my mother and my sisters. My sisters are thriving. Emily finished medical school and became a doctor. Sophia is building a career that makes her light up. My mother is safe, respected, and happy, no longer the woman pushed to the periphery of a legacy she had a right to. As for me, I returned to modesty with a new steadiness. Teaching had taught me patience, the boardroom taught me strategy. I learned that revenge is sweetest when it's clean, patient, and undeniable. When the enemy is defeated not by noise, but by the quiet, inevitable collapse of their own arrogance. Joshua will die knowing the one thing he could never accept, that a woman beat him at his own game. He will have evenings of silent thought, no cheer to soften the edges of his regrets. And when that realization settles in, perhaps it will be the most honest thing he experiences in a lifetime of performance. It feels strange to confess that I took pleasure in that. But justice sometimes looks like satisfaction. Sometimes it looks like a family finally eating without worry, like a sister walking across a graduation stage in a white coat, like a mother being called by her professional title and smiling without apology. Those things were worth every painstaking hour of paperwork, every quiet meeting, every sleepless night. If you asked me now what I would tell my father if he could see us, I would say, we did what you wanted. We kept your work alive and turned it back into something that serves us, not someone who took advantage of your kindness. And I would add, softly, because he always hated loudness, that revenge alone never heals, but truth mended some of what was broken. For anyone listening who has ever been told you're less because of your gender, your background, or anything else, patience and strategy are weapons. Not everyone gets poetic justice, and not every battle should be fought with a shout. Sometimes the best victory is quiet, thorough, and leaving the perpetrator with nothing but their own reflection and the knowledge that they were outplayed. I went from high school teacher to chairman of the board for the sake of revenge. I never wanted power for power's sake. I wanted justice. I wanted my family's name returned to a place of honor. I wanted my sisters to be able to finish what they started without shame. And in the end, that is exactly what I did. If you've ever had someone try to take what was rightfully yours, I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more tales of justice served, and share this with someone who knows the sweet taste of vindication.